Good morning, everybody. As we go to the chitas of the day, we start with the chumash of today, which today is Wednesday, the fourth reading of the portion of Bahar and Bechukotai, which actually goes into the book of the portion of Bechukotai. We started with Bahar, and today we go into the next portion. So we start in chapter 25, verse number 39. The Torah is talking about redemption of a human being. Somebody is sold as a slave, and in general, you're sold as a slave for 6 years, and the seventh year you're let free. The person sells himself for 6 years, or he's sold by the court for 6 years. And the Torah here talks about this law. So verse 39, if your brother becomes destitute, and that's usually the reason why a person becomes a slave. He's destitute, he's impossible to make a living, and therefore the only way he does it is by selling himself as a slave, and that's the way he can support his family. And he's sold to you. You shouldn't treat him of avdus like a slave. That means denigrating work through which he's made to look like a slave. Must carry his clothes, not carry his clothes after him to the bathhouse, or put his shoes on for him. Make him feel like a nothing. It's not the reason why he got sold that you should treat him like a nothing. How should you treat him? So the Torah tells you in verse number 40, you should treat him as an employee who's hired a hired residence. He shall be with you until the year of Jubilee. Yavid imach, he shall work for you. So that's what he only said he works for 6 years. Why does it say Shnat Yovel till the year of Jubilee? Rashi answers, we're talking about even if a slave is sold for 6 years and Jubilee happens to fall out in the middle of those 6 years, then he would go out also on the year of Jubilee. Jubilee, the year, the 50th year, in the counting of 7 times 7, every slave goes out, whether he's sold in the past couple of years, and the 6 years have not yet gone through. Verse 41, and he shall leave you in the year of Jubilee, him and his children. He returns to his family, and into the statutes of his father. So Rashi says, what does the Torah tell us of the ban of him and his children? When a person sells himself as a slave, he doesn't sell his children with him. Well, here we learn the law that when a person sells himself as a slave, the master, the one who bought him, now is obligated for his children. That's the whole reason why he sold himself, because he cannot support his family. So now you have now acquired not only him, you acquired his family. And therefore the Torah says that they all go free. Really, only he goes free, but automatically it's something good for the person who bought him. He's relinquished his responsibility for this family. What does it mean? He goes back to the statute of his father. That it means he must not be denigrated in general. He returns back to the status that he was. If he was an honored person in the community, and he went through this process of repaying whatever he needs to repay, he returns back to his normal status. You're not allowed to denigrate him in the community. Why? Verse 42, for you are my servants, ultimately you're all servants of God. I took you out of the land of Egypt, and therefore, no one should be sold as a slave. No one should be treated as slaves of humans. You are a slave of God. We're all slaves of God. Verse 43, you're not allowed to work with him with rigor, and you shall fear God. Rashi says, what means befarech, with rigor, with hard labor? Hard labor is unnecessary work. The only reason is to torment him. Do not say to him, warm up this drink for me when you do not need it. Or hold this, or under the vine until I come back, and you may never come back. Perhaps you'll say, no one really knows whether it's necessary or not. Therefore, the Torah says, you shall fear God. I know if you're treating another person, whether he's a slave or not, if you're treating another person with dignity. And you need to treat a person with dignity. Verse 44. Male slave or female slave from the nations of the world, not Jewish, which will live around you. Really, you should only acquire slaves from the nations of the world, not from Jewish people. And this was the way you treat us, the way Jewish people treated their slaves, was at a total different level the way the nations of the world treated their slaves. That's why the Gemara said that even princesses wanted to be a slave by Abraham than be a princess in their father's home. Because in general, Jews treated other people with greater dignity. And that's why the Torah allowed to buy slaves for the nations of the world, to get them out of that slavery too. And they become Jewish slaves. Verse 45. Also for the children of your residents that live with goyim, that live around non-Jewish, non part of the Jewish nation, buy their slaves. Buy their slaves. That get them out of that slavery, bring them into a much more protective slavery. But if you buy a non-Jew, he doesn't go out at 7. He doesn't go out of Jubilee. Doesn't have the non-Jewish slave doesn't have the Jewish law of slavery. And therefore, 46, is you shall hold on to them inheritance to your children. Their inheritance forever. These slaves are slaves forever. So if they become an aspect of true slavery, an aspect of slavery that become slaves forever, but in the children of Israel, a man shall not work his brother in rigor. So Rashi says, you shall hold on to them inheritance, because in the non-Jewish world, the slavery is an aspect of everlasting situations, not something that is for a tenure of a certain years. So therefore, if a Jew buys a slave, he has a non-Jewish slave. It's an everlasting thing, like in their laws. Verse number 47. If a resident non-Jewish gains wealth with you, and he's gonna, and what happens if a Jewish person be sold to a non-Jew? What happens if a Jewish person is sold to a non-Jew? Now he becomes a slave of a non-Jew. So therefore, it's an obligation. Torah says, 48. We should all try to redeem this Jewish slave from a non-Jewish owner. Don't allow him, even though he has the laws of the non-Jew will have to follow the law in Israel. The non-Jew will have to follow the laws of the Torah law, and he'll have to let the slave out in Jubilee. He'll have to let the slave out into 7 years. But why would you let him work in a non-Jewish home, which he might come to do things that are prohibited in Torah law, law of kosher and the law of Shabbos, etc., etc. So therefore, we should try our best to try to redeem him. Verse 49, an uncle or a cousin, Yigalena, you should redeem him. Anybody else in the family should try to redeem Yigalena, should try to redeem him. He himself, if he has the money, he should redeem himself, should get out of this slavery. Verse 50. And he shall calculate with the purchaser the number of the year, Ashnat Hayevel. So you should figure it out and sit down with the guy who bought him and buy him back. If he has more years, he should give more money, less years, whatever the calculation is. In verse 52, if there's less years, you evaluate how many years it is. He shall be with the employee hired year by year. You should not see your brother working in vigor in front of your eyes. If you're not going to redeem him, I'm sorry, so I said before that a person is sold to a non-Jew goes out in 6 years. It's not true. I apologize. He only goes out in the year of Jubilee. He and his children with him. So now she says a Jewish servant of a non-Jew may be redeemed only through these ways. But he can't be redeemed through 6 years. So he's only redeemed through buying him out or through the year of Jubilee. And therefore, that might be a long time. And therefore, we should try to redeem him. Why? Because the Jewish people are servants to me. And by letting him be a slave to a non-Jew might bring him to not be able to serve me. I am God, your God. Verse number, we're going to chapter 26, verse number 1. Do not make idols for yourselves. You should not set statues and monuments for yourself. You should not place a pavement stone on which to prostrate yourself. So Rashi said this in the continuation, even though it's a new chapter over here, but it's really a continuation of the previous verses. If you are sold to a goy, to a non-Jew, that's the problem. You might say, oh, I'm a slave. I'm a slave to this non-Jew. And just like this non-Jew worships idols, I need to worship idols. Just like this non-Jew breaks the Shabbos, I need to break the Shabbos. That's the problem. So therefore, you're putting yourself in, selling yourself to a non-Jew. It's putting yourself in these kind of problems. And even though your master that you sold yourself to is doing all these things, he's allowed to. He's a non-Jew, but you are not allowed to do it. And again, so Rashi said that's why it's important to get this person out of slavery, because he's ultimately going to come to do all these things, and which he's prohibited, whether he's a slave or not a slave, he's a Jew. And that's the way he explains this. Verse number 2. So those too, a non-Jewish slave cannot break the Shabbos. He has to keep the Shabbos. Magdashi Torah, you shall fear my sanctuary. Ani Hashem, I am God. That concludes the portion of Bahar, and we go into the portion of Bechukotai, which is verse number 3. If you follow my statutes and observe my commandments, and you will do them. If you will do them. Rashi says in Bechukotai Telechu, one might think this refers to fulfillment of mitzvahs. That already says. It says the next 2 words in mitzvah and you'll keep my commandments. So the obligation to keep the mitzvahs already says. What do you do with the verse? You shall follow my statutes. It means you shall walk. You shall work. You should put effort in the learning of Torah. That's mitzvah shishmeru. Why should you toil in the learning of Torah? Rashi says, "Amas lishma l'kaim." You're toiling in the learning of Torah, so that you should follow the mitzvahs and do the mitzvahs. As the Torah says, we say it in our Shema, "Limadatem oisam mishmaitem laseisam." You should learn the Torah and keep it in your heart to perform them. Verse number 4. And I'll give you rains in their time. And the land will yield its produce. And the tree of the field will give forth its fruit. So Rashi says, what is the meaning of Be'itam that will rain in the right time? What is that meaning? Meaning is that the time that people do not usually go out, and that's on Friday night. The God says, I'll make it rain on Friday night when everybody's at home, at the Shabbos table. That's the time, that's the Itam, that's the right time it should rain. Eitz Asada, and this refers to trees planted in the field as opposed to orchids that do not bear fruits, but are destined to bear fruits in the future. Eitz Asada, Mashiach comes. Verse number 5. And your threshing will last until the vintage, and the vintage will last until the sowing. And you'll eat your food l'seva, to satiate yourself. And you'll live secure in your land. So Rashi says, for the threshing will be so plentiful that you'll be occupied with it until the vintage. And you'll be occupied with the vintage until the it's not talking about rain, so it's not talking about rain. The verse number 4 is talking about rain. This verse is not talking about rain. It's talking about the actual food, the actual wheat that you're threshing. That you'll have so much that you're not going to know what to do with so much.
Rabbi,
yes.
it took me a minute to type, so I'm one verse past the question. Oh. But I would assume it would mean that it'll rain when it's dry.
Well, you won't have a dry period. There'll always be rain. So there won't be the concept of dry period in essence. So what means Be'itam means, that's what Rashi says, there won't be dry periods. There'll always be rain. The food, the land will be fertile. It means that even when it rains, it's only going to rain in a time where it doesn't bother any people.
Oh,
okay. One will eat little food, but will become blessed in one's innards. That means it won't give you any. You won't have to be gluten free. The food will be healthy and well, and everybody will enjoy the food of the land. Verse 6: V'nasati shalom be'eretz, I will give peace in the land. You will lie down with no fright. I'll remove wild beasts from the land. And no army will pass through your land. So Rashi says, you might say, here's food, here's drink. If there's no peace, there's nothing. And how true that is. That you can have all the plentiful of the land, but if you have no peace, you have really all the food is not worth it. And that's the sad thing. We need peace in the land. And from here we learn that peace is more important than anything else. You can have all the plentiful of life, but when you don't have shalom, you don't have peace. Whether it's peace in the land, whether it's peace in your home, you don't have it. It's all worthless. So that, and the sword will not pass through your land. The Dashi says that over here the Torah says not only there can be war, but nobody will even pass your land. There will be such a land of peace that nobody even use your land to make war. Verse 7, and after it said, you'll pursue your enemies, and they will fall at a sword. What does that mean? They'll fall by their own swords. You won't even have to kill them. They'll kill each other. So you'll be free from wars. Verse 8. 5 of you will pursue 100. and 100 you pursue 10,000. Your enemies will fall by the sword before you. So Rashi says what it means 5. 5 means only number, but also weak. You won't have to have a strong army. Because weak, those that are weak of you, will just chase big armies away. So Rashi says also the calculation doesn't make sense over here. Because if 5 100, how does 100 10,000? How do you go to that number? This calculation this 5% 100. This means that each Jew will pursue 20 enemies. Therefore, should the scripture not be written in 100 will pursue 2,000? So what's the calculation? How do we go from 5 and then 100 to 10,000? It doesn't. The calculation doesn't fit. The Torah teaches us that there's no comparison between a few who fulfill the mitzvahs to a group. The Torah teaches us in general that that there's no comparison 5 Jews, 10 Jews, and 100 Jews, or 1,000 Jews. The more people come together, it triples the power. It quadruples the power. And that's the beauty. It's talking about not the concept of the enemies. It's talking about the beauty of the Jewish people coming together. So if 5 people come together, they have such a great power. 100. If 100 people get together, their power quadruples. That doesn't go 1 to 20. It suddenly goes to 10,000. That's the power of coming together. They're going to fall like flies, not in a normal kind of way. I will turn towards you. Verse number 9. I will multiply you. It will make you fruitful. I'll multiply you. I will accept my covenant with you. Now she says, what does it mean when it says for Nisi in general? It means I will move away from everything. That's the beauty of what we learn in Chassidut. That the Eibishter, the Eibishter started saying, moves away from everything. Nothing is important to him but Am Yisrael. And therefore the Torah says, for Nisi Aleichem. That means the Eibishter is the God of the whole world. But then it's Yisa Hashem Panav Elecha. There's a personal relationship that the Jewish nation has with God. So Rashi ends off, bris chadasha, a new covenant, not like the first covenant which you broke, but a new covenant, which will not be broken. And it says, I will form a covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not like the covenant that I formed with the forefathers that they broke, but I will establish a new covenant with the Jewish nation that will never be broken. That completes the Chumash of today. We go now to Tanya of the day. Tanya is chapter 51 of Tanya. Alter Rebbe is explaining the concept of the connection that a Jew has with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He established his whole Tanya on the verse. That's very close to you in your heart and in your mouth to do. Because a Yid has the capability to make this relationship with God through all the levels of Ava that he has explained, to all the levels of love that he has explained. And which he explained yesterday, the love, ultimate love of the connection that a Jew has to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He started off a concept in chapter 35 of Tanya. Alter Rebbe said a statement in the Zohar said by what was called the Yunker, the young one of the young sages, said a very Kabbalistic statement. And the Kabbalistic statement was that Kilner Hashem Nishma Sodom. Very famous statement in the Zohar. Light of the Shekhinah, Kilner Hashem, the light of God, is the soul of man. And that means that the soul, that the human being has within him the concept of a light and a wick and oil. And the Zohar explains, and the Alter Rebbe goes into the detail of the meaning of the Zohar, that the light of God that's above him needs to have this wick and needs to have the oil that gives this light its existence and its power. So that to be able that the light, which is your godly soul, can be connected to the wick, which is the body, so that the light of the Shekhinah can actually rest in every single person. This is chapter 35 in Tanya. The Alter Rebbe comes back to it now in chapter 51. So just over here in chapter, now we explain further teaching of the Yunka. The Yunka is the young one. That is the light of the Shekhinah needs oil. The Zohar oil usually refers to the spheres of Chachma, wisdom. Here, through the Yunka, like oil, difference between oil and water. So oil is always separate, always separates itself from the water. And not only does it separate itself, it goes above. It skims above it. So that's why in Kabbalah, oil represents Chachma. It's always separate, and it's always above wisdom. Wisdom, as we explained in Chassidut, is something that's above. Koyach ma, what is it? And therefore, wisdom is in essence is connected to below, but at the same time, it rises above. And that's why oil specifically is something that's connected, that gives the capability to the flame. Because oil is the concept of Chachma, which gives the capability for the neshama to shine. It refers to Chachma, right? So what is the connection between a particular mitzvah and the oil, which refers to Chachma? To clarify this, chapter 51 explains the meaning of the concept of Shekhinah. The Shekhinah dwells or rests. That's one of the expressions of God. It's called the Shekhinah, which is called like the Mishkan, the tabernacle. In Hebrew, it's called the Mishkan. Why? Because the verse says, "V'asuli mikdash," you shall make for me. When God asked the Jewish people to make a tabernacle, He said, "V'asuli mikdash," make for me a holy place. V'shachanti, and I will dwell in it, or in you. In your midst. So the Mishkan is the concept of the Shekhinah, the presence of God, the way God dwells in our midst. That's the concept of Shekhinah. We call God by the name of Shekhinah. Shekhinah means to rest or dwell upon something, and how particular mitzvah do indeed derive from the divine level of Chachma, which is why they serve as oil, which enables the light of the Shekhinah to remain burning upon the wick of the human body. So Kabbalah says, the Yunka said, the sage, young guy in the Zohar says, that the soul of man, which is a part of God, is a fire. The wick is the body. And the oil gives the capability for the soul to stay on the wick. What is the oil? The oil is a mitzvah. Why is the oil a mitzvah? Because the oil, the mitzvah, comes from the wisdom of God. And because the mitzvah comes to the wisdom of God, that's why it's compared to oil, and that's why it has capability to give energy to this fire, which is part of God. So that's the teaching of the Zohar. In chapter 35, the Alter Rebbe brought this Zohar. Lashon HaYunka Deleel, in chapter 30, where the Yunka was quoted. Yunka is the young guy in Aramaic. Was quoted as saying that the light of the Shekhinah, which dwells upon a Jew, needs oil, which is the good deed that you do. So what is the connection between good deeds and the oil? That's where what is the connection between the mitzvah, which is oil, and the oil is chachma? What is the connection? So as I said, I already told you the connection, because the mitzvah is the wisdom of God. You're not doing a mitzvah for your own wisdom. You're doing it with the wisdom of God, and that's why it's oil. But first, after the Rebbe says, "Tzarech la'avayit tchila," it's necessary to first explain so they may understand a little bit. Lahavin k'tzas. I always like when the Alter Rebbe says lahavin k'tzas. He said it many times in the last couple of chapters. That these are very deep concepts, and we're just trying to find out. We're just getting a little bit understanding. Inyan hashras hashchina. To understand the resting, the presence of God, the base culture. It says that the presence of God resided in the Holy of Holies. When you say that God rests, the Shekhinah dwells. What does that mean? Ma inyone. What is the concept? What is the meaning of Ashar Shekhinah? God fills the entire world. If God fills the entire world, then God is everywhere. So what does it mean that God rested in the Beis Hamikdash? If God fills the entire world, He's everywhere. What does that mean? So we have to understand in general, what's the meaning of "you shall make for me a tabernacle and I'll dwell in it"? Me, you dwell the whole world. Why do you dwell in it? You dwell in it like you dwell anywhere. So what's so great about the tabernacle? What was so important about the Beis Hamikdash, the temple? And we pray every day, Shebana Beis Hamikdash, that God should reveal the temple. What's so special about it? God fills the whole world. So what are we looking for when we want the Beis Hamikdash? More than any place else, we're looking for another building. What are we looking for in the Beis Hamikdash? The Eibishter God fills the whole world. No place is void of Him. So this is a general question. So to answer the question, we go to the verse. Chassidus says, go to the verse. To understand this, you have to look at yourself. Look at your own flesh. Now, the Rebbe understands these words literally. From what we see within ourselves, from my own body, I can understand concepts of godliness. We can visualize a parallel. It's not exactly the same, but we can imagine it's an analogy of my body to the relationship with God in the world. Think about your soul. Your own soul pervades all the body, all the 248 limbs. The soul, the energy of the soul needs to give life force to every part of the body, from head to toe. But nevertheless, the energy of the soul comes from the brain. And from the brain, it goes to the rest of the body. So therefore, that everybody understands. So as I said over here, this takes place in all organs simultaneously. As the Rebbe explains, this diffusion of the soul refers to the life force from which the organs derive their vitality, in which respects all organs are equal. This one aspect of the soul emanates from the brain to the organs. And as Chassidus terminology, it claims it can be termed light, a revelation which is equal throughout, gives energy to the entire body. A second aspect of the emanation, that organs derive from the soul, in which the brain is as follows. So we have a general life force. This life force goes through the entire body, gives life. Then every organ has a different purpose. There's a different purpose in my eyes than in my ears, and in my eyes and ears to my heart, and to my brain itself. There's different aspects to each one. Then ultimately, every organ receives its power, what it needs, according to its form and according to its character. In other words, the difference between the functional ability of one organ and that of another does not derive from the organ itself. Like water is colored glass, for example, which takes the color of its contained vessel. Rather, does each organ draw from the soul its ability to see, hear, and so on, as the Alter Rebbe continues. So each and every organ, that's what my eye sees, is because there is a power in the soul that is specifically directed towards this concept of sight. The ayin lida is the eye receives from the soul a life force, the ability to see. The power of sight accords with the smooth and the translucent nature of the tissue of the eye. And the ear receives its soul force, the ability to hear. And the mouth to talk. And the feet to walk. Each organ in the body, and according to its composition and character, receives its life force and ability from the soul, which dwells and becomes revealed initially in the brain. As we clearly sense that the brain feels everything that happens in all the body and everything that happens to it. The brain has the capability, as long as you're awake, has the capability to feel every aspect of the body. Actually, the truth is, any pain in the body is because of the brain. So let's learn the Rebbe. Whoa, let's learn the Rebbe's teaching over here. We have some time. The Rebbe here added a commentary which clarifies the subject. By the way of introduction, the life force from the soul, which animates the body, comprised of two aspects. One is the life force, is the life-giving force, in what the whole body is alive and draws its vitality from the soul. In this aspect, there's no difference between one organ and the next. The head, for example, is no more alive than the foot, just as the foot is no less alive than the head. The entire body with all its organs is equally alive throughout. In its terminology, this aspect of life force giving is called the light of the soul. The light of the soul. The light shines equally upon everything around the light force, regardless of the quality of the nature of the object receiving the light, like the sun. The sun shines everywhere equally. Everywhere equally. That's the light of the soul. The second aspect of this life force is a specific functional power in which each organ draws from the soul. This power is unique to each organ. The eye receives from the soul the power to see, the ear to hear, and the mouth to speak, and the foot to walk. The manner in which the organ receives the latter life force and the functional powers can be explained in two ways. Listen to this. Deep stuff. One is that the life force emanating from the soul to the organ is utterly plain and uncompounded, possessing none of the diverse qualities and powers of various organs. According to this explanation, the various functional powers of the organ would be differentiated in respect to the life force emanating from them only after life force actually became enclosed within the organ. For example, only after the life force becomes enclosed within the eye would it become the power of sight. And only after it became enclosed within the ear did it become the power of hearing. But before that, it's just a basic energy. So in essence, the energy is formed after it became part of the eye. After it became the vessel of the ear, it became hearing. But before that, it was a power. It was an energy. An analogy to this would be the water in a colored glass. Although it remains colorless, yet since it's seen through the walls of the white or red vessel, for example, it seems white or red to the viewer because it's in a white vessel or a red vessel. Likewise, each organ receives a plain, uncompounding life force from the soul, and it's the organ that gives the life force enclosed within its specific functional abilities. That means not that the soul has hearing or the soul has seeing. No, the soul has an energy. And this energy comes now into the eye, and now the eye takes that energy and forms the concept of sight. That's one way of looking at it. Second possible explanation, and this is the one that is accepted in the Tanya, is that the soul, despite its pristine, uncompounded essence, includes its potential form of all powers of various organs. So the second, which Chassidus says is no, is that within the soul there's sight. Within the soul there's hearing. Within the soul there's walking. The soul itself has all its capabilities. And in these faculties, which each individual organ receives, the eye receives from the life force of the soul the power to see. The ear receives the power to hear. These powers were originally included in potentia within the soul. And each becomes revealed as the life force becomes enclosed within the prospective organs. Thus, the power to see or hear does not originate only when the life force becomes enclosed within the eye or the ear. It already exists in potentia within the comprehensive life force emanating from the soul, although it's not yet revealed. The Tanya proceeds to explain that this is the correct explanation. Commentary of the Rebbe, again, this is a Tanya lesson in Tanya that was written by Rabbi Weinberg, who used to give explanations of Tanya on the radio, and he used to give his explanation to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe would give commentary on his explanations that he explained. So this is a beautiful explanation the Rebbe wrote himself on his explanation that he should explain it on the radio. The commentary Rebbe explains that why we must accept the second explanation. If we were to say that the various functional powers are not differentiating potential within the life force until after it became enclosed within the organ, like water or light, which does not itself possess color, but acquires it when you view through a colored glass, then the brain will be conscious of the same sensation from what it experienced in the eye when it experienced in the ear, because these sensations have already been in their respective organs. Thus, too, water removed from white vessel is no different from water removed from the red vessel. Once you remove from the vessel, it loses the vessel's color. Likewise, messages conveying sensation from the eye will be no different than those coming from the ear, since they have already left their respective organs. So therefore, that the brain feels specifically the eye is because in the brain is the eye. One might argue, according to this explanation, which Tanya does not accept, that when a particular organ calls into being a functional power and the life force drawn into it from the soul, this differentiation becomes acquired in the life force, like ingot of silver, which has once been molded and shaped from the vessel, remains the shape later too. According to this argument, the difference affected by each organ in the life force drawn into it from the soul remains also in the sensation transmitted from the organ back to the brain after it leaves the organ. This would account for the different messages received by the brain for the varying sensations occurrence experienced by the eye or the ear, for example. So maybe that's the reason. If, however, we say the soul, which is based in the brain, utterly transcends any kind of differentiation, even the differentiation in potential, which the various powers of the organs are included within the soul, then the soul within the brain would not distinguish between the sensation of what happens to the eye and the sensation of what happens to the ear or other organs. Because the soul itself, according to this explanation, is utterly plain and uncompounded. Even therefore, if the messages coming from the various organs to the brain are indeed different from one another, yet this difference would not be distinguished by the soul in the brain, which already transcends all difference between organic functions. We must therefore say that a difference exists between the various functional powers later revealed in the organs, even before the life force is actually drawn from the soul to the organs. That means the Alter Rebbe wants to prove that there's seeing in the soul. The soul itself, even though the soul is pure and plain, it has within it the capability of sight. It has within it the capability of hearing. It has within it all the capacities. Whatever is in the human being is already in the soul. Tanya will now explain at which level of the soul this differentiation takes place. Where does it, in the essence of the soul, there's no difference between the whole body. Where does this concept in the soul itself, does this aspect that there's hearing and seeing and walking, which part of the soul is these functions manifest itself in? So the Alter Rebbe says, now the variations in receiving the functional powers and life force by the organs or the body from the soul, each organ mitzad atzmus receiving from the soul life force. The power in a different form does not derive from the soul's essence and being. In the soul's essence and being, everything is equal. As being the essence is divided into 248 parts, which are enclosed in 248 locations, according to the design of the various locations, not in the essence of the soul. Because according to this, it would follow that the soul's essence and being is designed in a physical designs and likeness and structure similar to the structure of the body, God forbid. Essence of the soul is godly. Just as the organs of the body have various shapes and forms, so according to this outlook, are the functional powers, while within the soul, different from each other. But again, cannot accept this. Because in the essence of the soul, in the essence of the soul, everything is one entity. In the essence of the soul, everything it's separated, it's divested from any physical design. Any type of definition of physical space, measure, or limitation. The soul has no, in the essence of the soul, any definition. The soul is free of definitions by virtue of its instant being and essence. So in the essence of the soul, in fact, the soul is so plain and free of all of these that even when it's actually enclosed within the organs, they cannot affect any change in the soul. That's what we say every morning. The soul that you have given me is pure. Because the essence of the soul, even when it comes into the body, is separate from it. It's not affected by the body. It's totally beyond any of the organs. It's all plain and simple, pure. It's not, and it's invalid to say according concerning the soul's being and its essence that it's in the brain of the head more than in the feet, since its being and essence is not subject to the constants of dimensions of physical space and limitation. It is therefore impossible to attribute the soul this limitation of being more in the head than in the foot. But everything is in the essence. Everything comes from the essence of the soul. Rak, Yag, Mini, Keiches, Vachayis, and Kolom, but the 613 kinds of functional powers and vital forces are included within the soul, within its being and essence, to become actualized and to emerge from its concealment. So the inclusion within the soul's essence, previously, while still included within the soul's essence, they're only in potentia and therefore hidden within the soul's essence. Not even as a functional power, which are revealed as such, while still included within the soul. In other words, within the soul is concealed the potential of 613 functional powers to become actualized and emerge from concealment and to become revealed as the soul journeys from level to level. So in the essence of the soul, that's why if Chassidus and Kabbalah is 5 levels of the soul. So in the essence of the soul, everything is there, but in potential. It's hidden. And as the soul connects itself to the body, ultimately it reveals its essence. It reveals the potential that it had within its essence. And then it comes down in 613 parts. To give each limb its personal vitality, its personal life. In order to animate the 248 organs and the 365 blood vessels of the body. So it's all a potential that is revealed as the soul becomes part of the body. That had within it all these 248 limbs and these 365 bodies. This we're right in the midst of we stop it right in the midst of a very deep concept of Dal Tadeh, because we're going to give an analogy from the body to the way God animates the world. From my body, I can understand the way God reveals himself in the world. So this is, we're trying to explain. Alter Rebbe therefore goes into very deep, and the Rebbe also goes in and tries to explain the soul, just like the soul, gives the life force to the body. And we understand that we're going to the second explanation, not that the body takes the life force and makes it into hearing and seeing, but actually the soul has within it hearing and seeing. But when the soul is in its pure state, in its essence, over there you don't see the hearing and seeing. You don't see the purity of the soul. You don't see the energy of the soul. So all the capacity of the soul is like one thing, is one entity, godliness. We call the Etzem HaNeshama, or Yechidah Shebenefesh, the oneness of the soul. So that's what we say in the word, in the davening. I said, Neshama Shenasatabi, Tahoirai, it's pure. In that level of soul, it's all one. But even though it's one entity, there's still everything that will ultimately be revealed is all in that oneness. So even though in that oneness you cannot see difference between the head and the foot, and the truth is in that oneness there's no difference between the head and the foot. But in that oneness there's already the potential that as the soul journeys from one level to the next level to become closer to this physical body, that was in that oneness, that was in that pure essence, will be revealed to 248 limbs and to 365 sinews. So that's the analogy that the Alter Rebbe wants to explain. We are in the midst of this analogy. We're not gonna, here the Tanya ends today. So you're going to have to wait till tomorrow to where the Alter Rebbe continues and ultimately connects that analogy to the analogy of the way the Shekhinah comes down into the world. And that ends the Tanya today. It's a very deep concept. You should, it is deep intellectual stuff. But again, that's why Alter Rebbe emphasized with Sadi Asalakah, we should understand. We should understand the statement that for myself I see God based on the statement of what's brought on in the Zohar. Kiner Hashem Nishnas Adam. As the light of God is the soul of man. The light of God is the soul of man. So you have to learn from the light, from a candle, that there's a fire, there's a wick, there's oil. And the connection between these three things that bring about the capability for the soul that is pure and godly to be able to give existence to the body that is physical. So if I understand how my soul gives my life force to my body, I can understand and how my soul ultimately rests within my body. My soul that is pure, that is one, that is godly, then gives the capability for my eye to see, then gives the capability for my mouth to speak, and for my feet to walk. How do we go from that oneness and uniqueness and equalness between everything? Everything is all the same, to ultimately having that my eye sees, and my mouth talks, and my ear hears, and my foot walks. That's because in the essence of the soul, there was already all these concepts already there. It was thus united as one, but there was sight in the soul. There was walking in the soul. There was hearing in the soul, in its own oneness, in its own essence. Today, the 23rd day of the month, Tillim of the day is 108, 109, 110, 111, 112. So for 108 to 112 in Tillim, and you would have done Chitas of the day. We will hold in there, my friends, because you just opened up an unbelievable teaching. We'll continue Mitzvah tomorrow at 8 a.m. We'll continue the Tanya, chapter 51 of Tanya, Mitzvah tomorrow. If you have a question, you may ask.